You know the underlying feeling of watching something in public where your instincts and senses are suddenly heightened, and even the slightest gaze from someone makes you feel like that person has somehow managed to judge your entire soul? Well, if you're someone who watches anime in public, then take that feeling and multiply it by millions, cause damn it, it is hard to feel comfortable in those situations. Welcome back to Animeology, and today we'll be looking at some great anime you cannot watch in public. Number 10, Kill la Kill. High school animes are always a treat in some way or another. It's just every year they find a new method to make sure some controversy is stirred. And who better to talk about this than one of the progenitors of controversies? Kill la Kill has a very good plot, fleshed out characters, a pretty decent power system, and a good hierarchy to follow that up. It's an action anime that follows a bunch of students that wear a certain uniform to gain superhuman powers, then duke it out with each other to see who is really strong. Except the uniforms look like this. The creators of the show take full advantage of how the uniform looks and put out as much fan service as possible. I mean, there is barely a scene where a female character's sword swings aren't accompanied by the rhythmic movement of the bosoms. It's just too poetic. Number 9, High School of the Dead. I know, you saw this coming. I just know you did. You did see this coming, didn't you? High School of the Dead is more than a decade old at this point, and still remains probably the most well-executed post-apocalyptic zombie show out there. It's just so good. This was one of those shows that genuinely made the world feel dangerous, like the characters were not safe at all. The plot armor felt fairly weak, and as a kid who was getting used to anime, I was very uncomfortable when those zombies started going rabid. But that is not why we are here, are we? High School of the Dead is unwatchable in public for 2 reasons. The blood and graphic, which isn't much of a reason, and 2, the insanely huge amount of fan service. You can't watch this anime without getting your eyes slapped with some form of fan service, be it a character using a weapon or just having a normal conversation. The creators find a way to make sure your eyes are fixated on the screen at all times. Number 8, Grand Blue.
へえ、確かにびっくり。こいつとだけは関わるまい。
Grand Blue has been one of the top comedy shows in recent years, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because they weren't able to appreciate the good bits of it. And I say good bits because some of the things this anime did were just beyond perception. The common idea of fan service in anime comes mostly from showing a bit of skin and teasing to get a fan base riled up, and having those specific frames shoved into our faces somehow works all the time. We are such a doomed species. Grand Blue took that narrative and wrote a genuinely good comedy show out of it, except they tweaked it a little with all the male characters as the main tease. What's even more embarrassing is that the anime genuinely addresses and embraces this act as a selling point. Like, they're not even denying the blatant fan service. Hell, they make sure to add one scene at any given opportunity, and somehow they make it work phenomenally. Number 7, Helsing Ultimate. Well, some of you might argue that there is some authenticity to showing a great deal of violence. While action and blood have become more mainstream and the general public doesn't seem to mind it quite as much as they did back in the days, Helsing has a rather peculiar way of handling these aspects. To start off, it's safe to say that they cross all boundaries of violence like there isn't a bullet wasted in this anime. Everything is piercing the skin, be it a bullet, head, freaking bones. It all goes in the skin. What's particularly disturbing about the anime itself is that most of our intriguing characters are walking corpses, and some of them are necrophiles. Like, legit, maniacs whose moral compass is broken beyond repair. The things they say and the way they say it as if it's a Saturday club night. It really isn't the type of content you'd want playing on your phone, as people around might drop an ear and assume the worst. And you know what worse means in this case? Number 6, Mushoku Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation.
わかりますか？名前わかりますか？話せますか？
死ぬのか俺。まあいいか、どの道人生積んでたからな。でもせめて童貞くらい卒業したかった。
I mean, when your source material is called the very father of modern isekai, then there has to be some controversial stuff in it given how isekai can be a bit polarizing sometimes. But that is what makes Mushoku Tensei a long popular title. Mushoku Tensei, the anime, not the light novel from a genre standpoint, does absolutely nothing new or revolutionary compared to the thousands of isekai anime that are out there. Instead, the show focuses on the core fundamentals, which includes taking the plot seriously when it matters while managing to create a beautiful and immersive world that captivates your attention with every frame. That's all good and all, but did I mention that the protagonist isn't really the most moral person out there? Not by a long shot. He might as well be a menace. The show itself is highly dependent on fan service, and some of the things they show are just... it's not for your average John Doe. Mushoku Tensei is more unwatchable because of some ideas and concepts it points to rather than the plot itself. Number 5, Konosuba.
なんだこれ。
It's the funniest isekai out there, and I won't take anyone's opinion seriously if they say otherwise, because they are stupid and the world is evil. Jokes aside, Konosuba has stood the test of time, establishing itself as the standard of what a trope-free isekai anime is like. But oh boy, are they good at pushing buttons. Like, these guys do not care for the consequences sometimes, which lets them put some of the weirdly funniest content out there that some people find rather unhealthy. I mean, not the entire roster of characters induces these situations, but the same cannot be said about the main characters. More notably, Darkness and Kazuma cannot take a break from making lewd jokes, putting themselves in uncomfortable situations. Number 4, Dead Man Wonderland. Don't ever think that the pilot episode of any show doesn't have enough to keep you engaged throughout the entirety of it, because Dead Man Wonderland will prove you wrong. There are 2 simple reasons why Dead Man Wonderland is just not a pop your device in public kind of show, and those are deaths and more violent deaths. This anime is like the writers finding new ways to get rid of the characters every other episode, which is understandable given how the premise of the anime is literally a prison full of inmates who are sentenced to death. The only difference is that death sentence is served not by waiting for your date, but by participating in sick death traps for the amusement of thousands of people who watch inmates die just as normally as they're watching clowns perform. It's honestly quite sickening. Number 3, Berserk. Old school anime has that unique hand-drawn art style that just feels so surreal and so attractive that once someone lays their eyes on it, they will stay on it. Berserk, being one of the pioneering old school anime, is widely known even among non-anime watchers, and given the reputation of being a bloody, brutal, and graphic anime, you can't really wish to quickly finish an episode while you're around people. The character style and the environmental design of Berserk have a specific eerie feel to it that makes any viewer feel like something mind-bogglingly crazy might happen at any given time. The story follows a bunch of chaotic characters that are not afraid to make immoral decisions or engage in heavy combat, because of which Berserk is very unpredictable on what kind of content they're trying to present. You wouldn't want to stand on a bus and watch Guts slaughter 100 men with a 6-foot sword while almost bleeding to death. I mean, yeah, it's a banger scene, but smiling and rooting to something like that might earn you a couple of glances. Number 2, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Stardust Crusader.
Yakamashi! 鬱陶しいぞこのアーマー!
Just all of it. All of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is weird, one way or the other. The very first element that comes to mind is the animation of this show, which is one of the best in recent years, but also unsettlingly weird for reasons like these. They do a lot of controversial stuff, and it's not like things like these have not been done before. It's the way they put so much emphasis on what is being shown and done that makes the show that much more interesting when you're alone, and that much more uncomfortable when you're in public or even a small company. I will point out a specific scene that made me go, huh? And it was the one with the chair where Kakyoin just casually takes away the chair from Jotaro's ice cream, pushes him off the ledge, and then proceeds to do this. Good lord. Number 1. Food Wars. It is one of a kind, isn't it? There is nothing that will ever topple the sheer outwardness of the show, the courage and audacity that is required to make people fall in love with characters having an intense foreplay session with food of all things. Food Wars is what the title says it is, an anime about chefs cooking the most delicious, fiery foods to prove who amongst them is the best, except when the female characters taste these dishes, it becomes an unrelenting ecchi anime that some people might find a bit weird. I mean, the visual representation of someone enjoying food can be done in a lot of different ways, but this was certainly the most unexpected way of doing it. Combine that with the voice acting and you just cannot watch this anime anywhere else, not even in your home if you're living with someone else. This has to be watched in solitude where there is no life form surrounding you. You cannot predict when a girl will jump out of thin air and the anime will change genres and immediately switch to intense ecchi mode while managing to stay in the context of food. Wrap your head around that.